Hey, this is the Swiftbird. I'm Yakov. Earlier this month, when I pushed a new commit to my project's repo, I saw something interesting. Or rather, I did not see what I was expecting, a build failure. For the last couple years, I've been using Xcode Cloud as the CI solution for my iOS and macOS projects. I got invited to test the service in 2021, back before it opened to the public. And ever since then, I've had mixed feelings about it. But all this time it was free, so I kept on giving it yet another try over and over again. In January 2024, Xcode Cloud's entry-level tier was going to become $15 a month. And I was kinda relieved, because I thought this would be the momentum for me to set up proper CI, instead of using some drag-and-drop toy. But it's January, and Xcode Cloud is still free to use. I guess it's time to give the service a thorough look. Let's start with the big news that completely slipped under my radar. A couple of weeks ago, Apple posted an update on its dev news feed, saying Xcode Cloud is now included with its developer program. For $99 a year you're already paying for having your apps on the App Store, now you're also getting 25 build hours a month. Previously, that 25-hour tier was going to cost you an extra $15 each month. To put the pricing into perspective, the same 25 hours on GitHub Actions would cost you $120 a month. That's 8 times more. How come, Apple? What's the catch? I'll get back to it later. Chances are you've heard something about Xcode Cloud, but never actually used it yourself. That's completely understandable. If you're working in a well-established company, you probably have dedicated DevOps engineers on your team. So software developers like you can often forget about CI altogether. From the very beginning, Xcode Cloud looked to me like it was targeting hobbyists and small developers working on equally small projects. At least that's the impression I got when Xcode Cloud was first announced at WWDC back in 2021.
It integrates the cloud with our developer tools in a powerful new way, and it's called Xcode Cloud. So as an individual developer, you can focus your energy on being creative, and development teams can collaborate more effectively.
The value proposition was crystal clear. You're a small developer, you want to build apps, but you may not have the resources to manage complex CI setups. We at Apple are giving you a simple service which lets you configure continuous integration with just a few clicks. With Apple's strong emphasis on its services business, Xcode Cloud's pricing announced the following year could raise suspicions. $15 for 25 hours a month looked like an offer too good to be true. But it's not the developers Apple's trying to make money off. Is the users. And offering more high-quality apps on the App Store is another step toward vendor lock-in. It's basically the same story as with iMessage. Oh shoot, the iMessage trick doesn't seem to work anymore. So maybe Xcode Cloud is not an entirely commercial project. But it's not charity either, because Apple certainly has a stake in all of it. But not only was Xcode Cloud significantly cheaper than competing project, it was also free completely for over a year. Or 2 years if you got into the closed beta. That 2-year time frame should be enough to convince many thousands of developers to sign up. And once they've gotten used to Xcode Cloud's simplicity, few are expected to cancel the plan when it's time to start paying. Especially when you consider the price that's lower than the competition. So why in the end Apple is basically extending this free trial period into infinity? And why was it announced just a couple weeks before the new pricing was going to take effect? This looks like a sudden change of heart, doesn't it? Obviously, we can only speculate, because Apple rarely comments on its decisions. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I will give you a couple versions of mine. Maybe the free trial results weren't as good as Apple expected. In a situation like this, extending the trial period and getting more people on board could be a good idea. Though in that case, it's not gonna be easy for Apple to backcheck later. Or maybe Apple has a lot of Intel hardware that's planned to be phased out in the coming years. For now, Xcode Cloud only uses Intel chips to run the workflows, and from my experience, the runners aren't very powerful. But since the machines are already there, why not use them as marketing inventory? Especially if you consider Apple's numerous solar farms, which give it very cheap electricity. Finally, if there's a chance Apple thinks the service is not up to the expectations in terms of quality. Over the time I used Xcode Cloud, I've had more than a few build failures that didn't have any sort of convincing explanation. I don't know, cosmic rays? But since you're getting it for free, your expectations aren't going to be as high. Tell me what you think. Why would Apple reverse its decision and extend the free period? In the 2+ years I've been using Xcode Cloud, my opinion's been fluctuating between wow, how simple it is, and wow, how confusing it is. What I definitely like about the service is its setup simplicity and high degree of integration with the typical delivery workflow. You don't have to think about certificates, provisioning profiles, and the similar stuff. In that sense, it really does just work. But it also has a few significant downsides. First of all, it sometimes fails my builds without a clear reason. And second, it's slow, as simple as that. It's slow to run the workflows, but what's more important is that its interface is even slower. I don't really care if my tests run for 10 minutes or 11. It all happens in the background while I can focus on another task. But when I need to start a build or view the logs, slow loading results in pretty bad experience. Overall, I think Xcode Cloud is fine, unless you want too much of it. I want to focus on building a product, not messing around with my CI workflows. And because of that, this setup once and forget approach works for me pretty well. But if I had to choose between Xcode Cloud when it's not free to use and another service, I would think twice. Actually, as the free trial period was coming to an end, I thought of making a video on setting up proper CI, using Fastlane and other industry standard tools. Let me know if you're interested, and I can go back to that idea. In terms of setup, Xcode Cloud is the easiest CI solution I tried, and I tried more than a few. Configuring a new app for building and testing takes roughly 10 minutes, and involves no configuration files whatsoever. You do everything in a step-by-step manner, right in the Xcode window. This simplicity is pretty appealing, and it is what makes Xcode Cloud a good choice for so many projects. But that is unless you get errors in the process. Then it becomes, much less appealing. Honestly, it's confusing as hell. Now, I did not plan this video as a complete tutorial. I was just setting up a new app of mine and recorded the screen just in case. But even in that very casual scenario, I got errors in Xcode. And also my very first build failed to upload. I got no clear explanation. The logs just suggested that I try once more. I did so, and this time it succeeded. As simple as it might sound, this is not a good solution. When you deal with continuous integration, you expect two things: stable environment and detailed logging. Sadly, Xcode Cloud isn't really good at either of them. Stable environment refers to having the version of each component fixed, so build status can be affected only by the changes in your code, and nothing else. In contrast to that, I sometimes found the workflows in my project using outdated or just strange iOS versions. They didn't match the selected Xcode version, and I have no idea how they got set. When you set up a workflow, you have a few important things to configure. In environment, you can choose which macOS and Xcode version the service will use, whether or not it should clear any cached files, and which environment variables to pass to the build process. Start conditions let you specify when the build should run. You can have them started manually, on a schedule, or when something happens in your repo. For example, when a pull request is created. Actions is what you want Xcode Cloud to do. In addition to running tests, it can also analyze the code, build an archive for the App Store, and more. For testing the app, you can select different devices and OS versions. Just keep in mind that the more destinations you select, the quicker you'll use up your monthly quota. And finally, Post Actions offers a few tools which to me save so much time. You can have Xcode Cloud notify you on Slack or by email, but that is something expected. What it can also do is automatically submit the build to TestFlight, so it becomes available for testing right away, without any work on your side. If you worked extensively with other services, the capabilities I described will hardly blow your mind. But now consider how much time it took you to set up a Slack integration, and how you can do the same in just a few clicks. Except for the initial setup, every other Xcode Cloud test can be done either in Xcode or in App Store Connect on the web. So when your QA engineers want to get a fresh build for testing, they don't need to install anything. Xcode Cloud also provides some advanced features. Advanced. Don't get me wrong, I fully realize Xcode Cloud is not a revolution in terms of its capabilities. But in terms of setup and usage simplicity, it pretty much could be. It's akin to online versus traditional banking. The same set of features as many decades ago, only nowadays you've got a much better way to access them. So, speaking of advanced features, out of the box, Xcode Cloud knows how to work with your project's dependencies, if you use Swift packages or Git submodules. If instead you rely on CocoaPods or something else entirely, then you're gonna need to write some scripts. It is the only thing you cannot do in GUI. But I tried working with scripts, and there wasn't anything difficult about it. The machines which run your workflows come with all the default command line tools such as Bundler, and also they include Homebrew. But scripts are not limited to just installing dependencies. In fact, you can use them to do pretty much anything, like upload the artifacts to your own storage, check code formatting with a linter, or change the apps icon. In the description, you'll find a few links on how to use scripts with Xcode Cloud. Setting up and using Xcode Cloud is really easy. And as you can see, it even provides you some degree of extensibility. But nevertheless, the service has some limitations which can render it unfit for your project. First and foremost, Xcode Cloud is not a general-purpose CI solution. It's designed specifically to work with the apps you publish on the App Store. iOS apps, great. Apps for the Mac works too. Frameworks, not really. Though, if your framework is open source, you can use GitHub Actions for free. Second is scalability and reuse. Unlike most continuous integration services, Xcode Cloud does not use text-based configuration files. That means you cannot reuse your workflows in another app, and any changes you have to sync manually. Well, technically App Store Connect offers an API, but good luck with that. Even Xcode sometimes can handle it. Finally, while scripts provide some degree of customization, even with them Xcode Cloud is still not as flexible as something like Fastlane. You've got only 3 stages in the build process where you could run a custom script. I assume they address many needs and scenarios, but I can easily come up with even more cases where they won't suffice. Despite my criticism of Xcode Cloud in the previous sections, I nevertheless think it's one of the most suitable CI solutions today. And I'm not just talking about your pet projects. In fact, right now I'm working on integrating Xcode Cloud into a pretty much real app available on the market. The team behind it did not feel the need to bother with CI. It is something I see fairly often in small teams, and I totally get the reasoning. When I joined the project, I made building a great delivery pipeline one of my priorities. Of course, I had my reservations regarding Xcode Cloud. But when I researched its capabilities in detail, I found it capable of doing every single thing this project needs. As the team grows and the project evolves, at some point Xcode Cloud may not be enough anymore. Because of that, I have a plan in place which will make it easy to migrate away when the time comes. Obviously, if you realize from the very beginning that you're gonna need something more powerful, then you should probably save your time and start working with Fastlane right away. But with its Xcode integration, user-friendly setup, and pretty generous free plan, Xcode Cloud seems like the answer in many scenarios. However, the main idea of this video is not that you need Xcode Cloud specifically. It's that you should use some form of CI for testing and deploying your apps. Whenever I start a new project, continuous integration is one of the first items on my list, especially when the project uses some technology that's new to me, because doing so often involves setting up and testing many things locally. I want to make sure I won't have to make drastic changes later in the process, and spending 15 minutes in the beginning to ensure my peace of mind seems like a fair price. Even before today, if you'd been working on something important, you didn't really have a good reason not to use continuous integration. But with Xcode Cloud staying free, now it's true more than ever. That's it for today's Swiftbird video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so, and consider supporting the Swiftbird at the links below. Next week, I'll be back with the final episode on memory management in Swift. And after that, you'll see more tech stuff. Until then, make your Swift fly.